So let's begin with our last presenter, Shanice Chesney. We'll be talking about the brain and the computer, free will, and consciousness.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So as you guys can see, didn't do any visuals. I wanted it to just be me, you guys, your brain, and free will. So let's get started. When looking at the difference between free will and consciousness in terms of the computer and the brain, there are debates stating that the computer can function the same as the brain. Technology has evolved to where computers are able to think, decide, react to emotions, and respond in an appropriate way. However, most argue computers are missing one key factor which holds them back from mimicking humans: free will. Free will is commonly defined as the power of acting without the constraint of necessity or fate. Since computers are programmed, it is difficult for them to act without the constraint or have a predetermined fate in the future. The concept of free will does not and cannot apply. With using concepts and experiences from the past to gain insight and make decisions for the future, computers operate on a similar way to brains called neural prediction. This neural prediction is a type of neural activity in which brains operate by using past experiences and how they were handled to make decisions for current situations. Throughout this paper, I'm going to use 3 studies conducted on the topic of consciousness versus free will, and I will suggest free will is an illusion, and with that, computers can evolve to mimic brains. Free will used to be seen as a factor in which people can determine their own destiny and be the master of their own fate. Advocates of free will claim each person is able to choose how and when they make their own chapters of life. In the past, scientist Benjamin Libet used EEG and an oscilloscope screen to record the brain activity of volunteers who were told to make a spontaneous movement. He asked his subjects to perform simple movements, in most cases flexion of the fingers or wrists, and to estimate the time of conscious awareness of the urge or decision to move by reporting the position of a spot moving on the circle on the screen. They were told to perform the movement whenever they felt like doing so and to pay close attention to the time when they were first aware of the urge to move. Through his studies, he discovered the readiness potential which suggests the brain prepares to act well before we are conscious of this urge to move. The first paper analyzes the readiness potential as a signature of the brain in which it always plans and prepares to move. People do not normally realize they are not the ones actively making these decisions. It is very common they believe they are always in charge of their surroundings and their decisions. However, this is not the case. When Benjamin Libet released the studies, the general public and society was not surprised to his findings. People were highly receptive of the readiness potential and how it affects their lifestyles. It was clear that regardless of whether or not the participant thought they consciously made a decision, the brain had already made this decision and was preparing to act. Even though the evidence was clear, it's still difficult to interpret how this newfound concept will be applicable to real life. In years to come, after many similar studies, an interpretation was finally reached by the scientist Gieger, who he determined the brain makes a spontaneous decision based off 2 factors. One being based off visual input and the other being based off the neuron threshold reaching its limit. These conclusions were made on a decision that was, of course, unconscious. The hypothesis was made that, similar to Libet's experiment, the trigger in which the action had made to be was on an internal factor. After the brain determined on how it makes these decisions, it was time to transfer this intelligence to artificial intelligence as represented by a computer model. This method marks the first of many on attempting to duplicate the computer as a brain. Here, there was a neural noise sent around each threshold, and once the limit was reached, it made a decision on how it should move. Through the result of the study, it was seen that each time, no matter the type of noise and how random the scientists wanted it to be, the readiness potential was again present. After many studies and experiments, the first paper concludes that yes, our brain has already decided to move before humans are able to make a conscious decision on how to do so. This process has determined that it may not even reflect a decision and people simply act. The idea of decision-making lies within the concept believed to be called spontaneous brain activity. However, these decisions are seen not to be spontaneous at all. In terms of free will, there's plenty of evidence against it, and many scientists are leaning to the idea of conscious will. In terms of the experiments, it is commonly accepted that the idea of neural basis and the readiness potential, as presented here, has the potential to lead to the demise of free will. Through further research, the concept of biological consciousness and free will expands that free will is no longer determined unconsciously, but determined by experiences, which creates pattern. Beginning with the concept that consciousness and free will are controversies that need to be further analyzed in terms of validity, artificial intelligence is constantly in the debate on how consciousness can be applied to the computer mimicking the brain for further research and its uses. This second paper dictates that the difference between affect and effect is an important aspect to distinguish when looking at free will and consciousness. On one hand, there's a psychological affect of conscious experiments, and on the other hand, it arises from its impactful effect. Through experiments, it was seen that this way of thought was also valid in terms of applying it to artificial intelligence. Humans expect their experiences to be similar, but there is no limit that says this cannot apply to computers as well. According to the second article, when incorporating artificial intelligence, there are objectives and guidelines which must be filled for it to have fulfilled the concepts of consciousness. These guidelines are the ability to discriminate, categorize, and react to environmental stimuli, integrate information, report mental states, have access to its internal states, control behavior, and know the difference between wakefulness and sleep. Most of the artificial intelligence machines which were subject to these tests were self-reporting and did reveal a level of consciousness, suggesting that computers can and will be able to duplicate a human brain. This similar conclusion was not made as quickly in determining free will. Through experiments, it was clear that free will remains as a perennial philosophical problem. It remains too contentious to shed any clear light on the role of consciousness. In order for one to function at the very base minimum, consciousness is needed in order to have free will. This relates back to the concept of affect versus effect, in which one can be seen being directly related to each other. In this case, affect is not the cause of any effect, but it does, however, lead to the interpretation of consciousness as an epiphenomenon. Epiphenomenon is the elimination of causation of material effect by something immaterial or nothing at all. It is seen as a secondary effect or byproduct that arises but does not causally influence a process in particular. Epiphenomenon is closely linked to determinism, in which it is mainly concerned about the conscious decision and not relying on any external factors to determine the future. Determinism is concerned with, simply put, this idea has the potential to eliminate the concept of free will. Through many experiments and studies where the neural prediction was present, as well as the readiness potential, it was strongly suggested the cognitive function of the brain is, at a core level, supportive of feelings, emotions, sensations, and the reactions to these feelings. The reaction to these sensations is marked by conscious action being taken from previous rounds of how it was handled in the past. With this realization, the suggestion of there being no such thing as free will due to the unconscious decision-making and past experiences the brain uses becomes a recurring theme. There are arguments against this thought, which claims the mental decision and the bodily action become a mechanical result of our own doing, an exercise of what we refer to as free will. This then determines us as free. Although this school of thought can also be argued for the reason as to why we do not have free will, the fact of neural phenomena supports consciousness at a greater level. With consciousness being used as a feedback from actions we have done in the past, this loop of past, present, and future events will forever be playing in our brains. In relations to computers, on an evolutionary aspect, they are changing to interact with each other, to interact with human brains, and to interact with whatever else it is programmed to work with. As computers grow to interact with different mediums, the idea of free will is slowly diminishing and active consciousness is growing. In the last paper, through 3 experiments, it was once again supported that free will highly suggested that free will does not exist, and the brain instead relies on the conscious decision made by its human. Through the first experiments, the scientists highly suggested people's minds and decisions can be altered without their even knowing it, impacting what they think and do. This can be done through brain scans, underlying images, and suggested access to their unconscious mind. It was suggested neuroscience can detect all the activity which aids a person in decision making, and finally that even mind readers can use their abilities to change a person's decision without their being aware of it. After analyzing the last study in terms of humans, it was necessary to see how this could impact artificial intelligence and if the same concepts can be applied. In short, yes. Although there is talk among scientists that with this technology, humans have the greater chance to not lay claim to any actions they may commit, People would believe they have no effect on what they're doing, and would also claim that what they ended up doing was not their intention. This idea of thought can only be accepted under monitored experimental studies. In general, the idea of this technology that is used on humans can also be used in technology and artificial intelligence is growing due to the increasing disbelief in free will versus consciousness. As I've analyzed free will versus consciousness throughout this paper in terms of the 3 separate experiments, it is highly suggested that free will is no longer supported. It is strongly encouraged that the brain functions on consciousness, neural predictions, and readiness potentials in which it unconsciously processes previous experiences to shape the way for current and future decisions. As consciousness becomes more accepted as how the brain functions, the line that separates the computer from the brain slowly begins to disappear. Free will versus consciousness is the last full debate in which scientists and philosophers cannot agree on, but thanks to new innovations, consciousness is overtaking free will, thus furthering us as a society.
Questions for our panelists?
Yeah.
So I guess with the first study, because I've heard about that study before, and one of the things that I always sort of wonder is how do you start teasing apart like your brain from your mind? Like it's still happening in your brain, and so to say that you don't have free will because your brain acts before you decide to act is like saying that your brain is a separate person from you. And so like how do you kind of
So that concept, like even before this paper, I was like, does this even make sense anymore? But it's just kind of weird, but I think I try to simple it down. So I try to look at like going onto a bus. Like when you see the bus doors open, you automatically step up. Whether you know that's in rules that you have to step up or that past experiences, you automatically step up. So I kind of like try to simplify it as where you actively have to get on this bus and you actively are using your feet and your legs to step up. But that action, you're not really telling your legs, okay, one step, left, right. It's just like it's almost that pattern and that habit that whether you know you've developed over time, but through your experiences, what you've watched, what you've done, it's become a sort of natural state to you, but internally it's just your brain reprocessing that natural habit. That answers your question. It's a weird one.
Okay, so in cognitive psych last semester, Dr. Vines actually had his debate whether we had free will or not, which was my topic. So I'm kind of curious as to why you decided to choose this, because I know in psychology, whenever you say, are you basically saying that with the advancement of technology that they'll eventually have the same as a human? Because what we're taught, at least in psychology, which I know it's probably going to be negated in the next 10 years, is that technology only goes to about the age, like even with artificial or whatever investment, it's only to about a 4-year-old because they're not necessarily making all of the synaptic connections that need to happen.
Yeah, so what started me was actually my core class with Dr. Patterson. The second half, we were talking about computer science and artificial intelligence, and even that has nothing to do with my major. I'm an international studies and Spanish major, guys. I am completely fascinated by artificial intelligence and the opportunities that it can do. I mean, yes, there is a lot of potential negativity surrounded with artificial intelligence, from the basis of people being able to lose their jobs to it being programmed for evil purposes, but in my opinion, I feel it's a real option. But in my opinion, I feel that the greater good in terms of what artificial intelligence, whether that's being able to deliver medical supplies to remote areas or just very intricate surgeries in which, we're humans. If you are tired before a heavy surgery, you can kill someone. Versus artificial intelligence, you can program them to do that surgery over and over and over again, and I mean, there might be like 1% chance of failure, but it's greater in terms of human effort. And I think artificial intelligence is just fascinating, and especially now in just all the major developments that we're making in technology. I mean, the other day I saw that the artificial womb, I don't know if anyone's seen that, but I mean, that's wild. And so when we kind of delve deeper into what makes artificial intelligence and what really separates the line from humans and computers, it came down to, well, can a computer make that decision like the same way a human can make this decision? And a lot of people look at it as emotions and empathy, but I mean, what are emotions? What is empathy? Do we really have it? Is it something we've learned over time? Is it widely accepted? So I just think that whole, and I mean, this is a debate that has been going on since 1960s and even before then, and it's 2017 and it is still pregnant, even if not more pregnant today. So yeah, I was just fascinated by it.
Great presentation. Thank you very much. I wonder if you make a distinction between free will, like those involuntary things that you talked about, stepping up on a bus, or sometimes you're driving, you're just on automatic pilot.
Right.
That kind of free will versus the bigger question free will is like, if I decide to take my life, if I decide to, change religions. I mean, those are other free will questions,
Yeah.
but I'm not sure if you distinguish, those
I
kinds
personally
of
haven't thought about it on a more, I guess, personal level. I think in terms when I was thinking, I think more practical decisions and everyday. But when thinking about it on, I guess, more grave subjects like that, I feel like, well, now that I'm talking about it more, I'm not sure, because I feel like you should have, I feel like there's a underlining base of what you can determine as free will, and maybe they just fall on different spectrums, if that is like another study that I feel like is out there. Because, I mean, you guys are probably gonna hate me when I say this, but I mean, sometimes you can be affected to end your life by your society. Like in my Asian politics class, in terms of the samurai, I mean, that was a whole culture, that was a whole code in where taking your life, you didn't think anything about it. It was your code, it was for your lord, it was what you did to prove your loyalty and your deliverance to that society. And so maybe in 2017, I don't want to say, people are seeing things online and like, ooh, that seems cool, I'm gonna do it. But then you also have to look at it in terms of video games, when people say you don't want to have your kids exposed to a lot of violent video games because are they gonna go up to kill someone? So it's like, is that their own free will that they saw it, that they were like, ooh, what does it feel like to end a life, or is it just their own personal situation? So, that's an interesting one. I'll have to think about it.
Okay. We'll take one last question for Shanice.
Yeah, there's someone else. Okay, yeah.
Well, I was actually gonna piggyback on that thought. I think I would say that even really big scale decisions taking your own life or changing religions, generally to some level still boils down to we weigh pros and cons, and we kind of weigh what we know, and there might be some emotional element that's up for debate about whether or not a machine can imitate that. But I think to some degree, it all comes down to a decision process, and machines can imitate decision processes. So
I'm sure a machine can never program itself to end itself. Maybe we got there today. Yeah.
I mean, I guess a computer can kind of recreate a decision process, but I mean, I've seen a lot of times where people take bad decisions. So how do you program a computer to take good decisions and bad decisions? Because there's people that vote.
Is it important to us to be able to program a computer to make bad decisions?
I mean, humans have the ability to do that.
Yeah, that's true.
That's true. So with that also just comes down to, I feel like with that comes down to who is actually programming it, because people can program negativity and
I'm not talking
awfulness
about positivity
and
or
that.
negativity.
Yeah.
When she brought up the pros and cons.
Right, the pros and cons
And then
situation.
your decision basically comes down to a difference between the pros and cons. I feel like that's not always necessary for humans.
I guess, but I feel like we're always making a pros and cons when we actively make pros and cons. Still something that you want to do.
It also, I think, also depends on the context, evolutionary speaking. It suggests that all of our decisions are made in the interest of survival. So
Yeah.
there's always pros and cons involved in that decision-making process.
Maybe it's like a subtle one.
Yeah.
Subtle conversation.
Well, again, let's thank our speakers.